even if carnivore did cut my years short, even if this cholesterol was going to kill me, wouldn't I rather have 60 good years than 70 absolutely miserable ones? And I would tell that to people. I'd say it's not going to hurt me. But even if you thought it was, I would rather live a few less happy, functional years.
Yeah, I think that last statement is pretty powerful because we all have a choice, and no one wants to live a prolonged life of misery and pain. And I'd rather just put me out of my misery if that's the case. And I'm not convinced that this is shortening anyone's life. Quite honestly, I don't think there's any data that would suggest that that's applicable to this population. This morning we have Emily is going to be chatting with us today. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, I'm doing great. I haven't got to see you at the morning meeting in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been here. Well, good to see you. Where are you? Where do you look like you're standing in front of like Camelback Mountain or somewhere? Where's that at?
I'm in Indiana. My husband, a lot of his family's from Arizona, and I have no idea where he was, but he took this picture in Arizona, and I really liked it. So I made up my Zoom background.
Yeah, it looks like Arizona. I was just saying, it looks like camel, kind of like, I don't know. It's probably not Camelback, but it looks something similar to that. But anyway, So you're in Indiana. Well, very good. I spent part of my youth growing up in Indiana, in kind of the northwest corner up there. What part are you in?
I am in East Central Indiana. I'm like 35 miles from Indianapolis.
Okay. Yeah.
Close to Muncie.
Muncie, Indiana. I'm familiar with it. So anyway. Welcome, Emily. Well, thanks. You are not only a success story, but you're also one of our coaches. And so welcome. Thank you for doing that. So I guess without further introduction, go ahead and just start talking a little bit about what's been going on with you over the last few years and how things are going.
Yeah. So I think maybe I want to say 3 years ago, I won't swear on a Bible, but about 3 years ago, my dad introduced me to keto, and I was about to get married to my husband. So yeah, it had to be 3 years ago or 3.5. And I just wanted to lose some weight for the wedding. I had no other interest. I'd been miserable with, chronic pain and fatigue my whole life. I didn't have any hope that it would help. So I lost some weight for the wedding, but I was still miserable. Matter of fact, my pain levels went up. And then I got pregnant with my first daughter, who's 2 now. And there was something in me. All my body wanted was meat. I didn't want anything else. I would literally have dreams about like sausage and ground beef. And I was like, I wonder if it would be okay, or like what's going to happen to me if I just give in and just eat meat because my body wants it. And that's when I found you. And here was this crazy guy that said it was okay. And I was like, so I dug into the research and I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And I never looked back. I have since reintroduced a few things, but I think, keto was too high oxalate for me, and carnivore just zapped my chronic inflammation.
Yeah. I mean, I saw like maybe you had some sort of connective tissue issue or something going on. What was going on there?
Yeah. So when I was 14 or 15, I was diagnosed with, they would go back and forth between lupus and connective tissue disease, or undifferentiated connective tissue disease, because that's what was showing up in my blood work. And so in shorthand anyway, we called it lupus, and I went on a bunch of, medication for that. After going carnivore, my tests then showed negative for these disorders. Unfortunately, it did come back after I had my daughter, but what didn't come back was the unbearable symptoms. So I don't know what about my pregnancy, or I had a hard birth. I had some kind of birth hospital trauma that I think kind of flared it back up, but I am still far more functional than I ever was.
Yes, and certainly, as I mentioned many times, diet plays a huge role in this, but there are other environmental inputs, and pregnancy is obviously very stressful on a woman's body, for sure. And then we see a lot. It's interesting. We see a lot of thoughts around autoimmune diseases having to do with pregnancies and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So you said you saw a significant reduction in your inflammation. So I guess that's just how you felt, I assume. And then were there some lab markers you were looking at, like, C-reactive protein or any of those types of things that showed decreases in inflammation?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't remember the whole panel, but you know what a kind of autoimmune or inflammation panel looks like. So my CRP balanced out and went back to a normal level. Almost all of my inflammation markers returned back to a normal level to kind of, on a bad day, borderline. But I didn't have any more shocking inflammation markers.
That's very nice to see. Other things I saw in the intro, you'd mentioned you'd suffer with like reflux. Was that something that you had before?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like one day I just woke up and I had like the heartburn of a 50-year-old that had been like, I just feel, and what I mean is I felt like it was always like a thing that my parents dealt with, that my grandparents dealt with. And I felt like I just one day woke up and I had constant heartburn. So I would take like 4 20-milligram Pepsid a day. Mm-hmm. And I would just take it preventatively. I knew it was going to happen. So I'd wake up, I'd take one. I couldn't eat till I took one because I felt so sick and so nauseous from the heartburn. And I thought nothing would take it away. And even like I said, it was one of the things that got worse on keto because I wasn't aware of a low oxalate kind of keto or ketovore. So I was eating all the spinach, all the vinaigrettes, all that kind of stuff. And the only that took my heartburn away was the carnivore diet. The only thing.
Yeah, I think the physiology behind that's pretty interesting. When we eat a lot of food that is gas producing or fermentable, it tends to maybe push pressure and that heartburn goes, back upwards.
Yeah.
What was, you mentioned at 14, 15, you were diagnosed with this non-specified connective tissue disorder versus lupus. What was your diet like growing up through your early parts of your life? And did you ever because, you said you wanted to lose weight. What are the things you've tried over the years?
Yeah. So about growing up, my younger years, lived on a cattle farm. My grandpa worked outside all day with the cattle. My grandma worked inside all day with us in the house. And we always had like good whole foods. It wasn't until I got older, looking back and was able to make my own food decisions, that everything kind of fell apart. So looking back, I think 14, 15, I was able to microwave my own pizza rolls. And why wouldn't you? They're so good, right? As a teenager, this is what you're thinking. Yeah, so my diet declined as my age inclined. And I do look back and notice that is when symptoms got really bad. Back then, I had no idea about diet and how that could change. So all I had tried was what my trusted doctors told me to, which is biologics and heavy amounts of Plaquenil and prednisone tapers and NSAIDs, which of course I'm sure led to, didn't help the acid reflux. So I had tried just a lot of medication. I had tried some exercise, but it was so difficult for me to exercise between the pain and the fatigue and kind of the depression of somebody telling you you're not normal, you're not going to be able to do these things. So none of it worked until I cut out the culprit.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of people in that situation that they have these issues. They're in constant pain, and it's hard to tell them, hey, just go exercise, because it's just too damn painful, quite honestly. And it's just not, no one's going to want to do it if they hurt every minute. And yet many of them, you say, well, let's change your diet. They're unwilling to do that. Why? What sort of made you say, hey, let's just change our diet and see what happens? How did you, like you said, how did you decide to go carnivore? I mean, you mentioned you did keto at one point. Was it difficult to make that decision?
It wasn't. So yeah, I had went keto and I still had no idea about the health benefits of keto or carnivore. I just wanted to drop some weight, and I did. And I got married, and then I got pregnant. And during about the middle of my pregnancy, my body was just screaming for meat. I didn't want anything else. I could just puke at the thought of anything but meat. And so that's when I was like, well, I wonder if I can do that. I looked up, I found you, I looked into it. I was just like, it was my okay. The carnivore community was my okay to give my body what I wanted. I was like, I'm not alone out here. So it wasn't hard. I also didn't have a hard transition because I had been keto for 8 months to a year. I was just so relieved being pregnant to be able to eat what I want. I had no clue it would help my health. And basically, as the days went by, after I had just started to eat meat, I thought, what the heck? Here I am, fat and pregnant with all these disorders. And I woke up and I had a really good day. And I was like, wow, this is great. I will probably crash out tomorrow. But tomorrow I had a good day. The next day I had a good day. And I realized my inflammation's disappearing. I'm not fatigued. I'm not, depressed about it. I'm not anxious. I'm able to put the crib together, to do all these things. And here I thought pregnancy was going to be so difficult for me with all these disorders. And as soon as I gave myself the okay and went into carnivore, I just kept waking up and having good days. And I kept waiting. I kept waiting on the other shoe to drop, and it never did.
Yeah, it's just, you just take it one day at a time, and you see how, and that's often how we succeed, just one day at a time. How did your family react to this? I mean, I guess your husband or your partner, how did that happen with regard to, like, hey, you're only eating meat? It sounds kind of crazy. Did you get a lot of that?
I did from extended family. My dad was already keto and he wasn't ready to jump to the carnivore train yet, but he definitely didn't believe it was bad for me. He wasn't worried about my health or anything. So he was super supportive. My husband is amazing. He jumped right in and saw his own health benefits, and we never looked back. I had some blowback from extended family, but people close enough to me had seen me struggle and were like, if you feel good, you do you. Because in the long run, it's not true. But the theory is, even if carnivore did cut my years short, even if this cholesterol was going to kill me, wouldn't I rather have 60 good years than 70 absolutely miserable ones? And I would tell that to people. I'd say it's not going to hurt me. But even if you thought it was, I would rather live a few less happy, functional years.
Yeah, I think that last statement is pretty powerful, because we all have a choice, and no one wants to live a prolonged life of misery and pain. And I'd rather just kind of put me out of my misery if that's the case. And I'm not convinced that this is shortening anyone's life. Quite honestly, I don't think the data there's any data that would suggest that that's applicable to this population. So what does it look like for you, a carnivore diet? I mean, you mentioned you've added some things in, but how did you start? What did you do? Were you eating, I don't know, once a day, twice a day? What kind of foods were you eating? Were you grass-fed, grass-finished, organs, no organs? How did you do it?
Yeah. So I just adopted the philosophy that, I kept looking and people kept saying at the beginning, just eat meat till you're full. and then quit. And then when you're hungry, eat meat till you're full and then quit. So that's what I did. I didn't concern myself during transition with tweaking and perfecting. So I ate a lot of ground beef. That's just what my body wanted while I was pregnant. I ate a lot of ground beef. I ate a lot of sausage. I'm not a huge chicken person, but I ate a little chicken. I just basically ate any meat that I could get my hands on that I enjoyed during transition. And the first few weeks, maybe month or two, I was ravenous. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but the best I can think is my body was finally getting what it needed. And I was absolutely ravenous. So was my husband. We put away ungodly amounts of meat. You know, I'm talking like 3 or 4 pounds a piece a day. But we're not bodybuilders. We're not like big people. And so we were eating 4 or 5 pounds of meat a day. After a while, after about a month, it evened out. And all of a sudden my body just felt like, okay, I've had enough. And so then I would go to eating about 2 meals a day, 2 large meals, but.
And you said you're pregnant. So did you do a pregnancy while carnivore?
Yeah, I switched from keto to carnivore midway through my first pregnancy. And I don't know, it was a breeze for me.
Any problems with the baby or baby? I'm assuming baby's doing fine and no issues there?
Yeah, she's fantastic. She's a strong little 2-year-old. She's stout. She's got her back is ripped, and that sounds funny. But if she's got her shirt off and you turn around and you look at her back and her shoulders and her legs, she's stout. She looks like a baby bodybuilder. But yeah, she was born at 37 weeks and she was completely perfect. She wasn't overweight. She wasn't underweight. For her age, she was 3 weeks early, but she had no trouble with blood sugar or controlling her body temperature or any of those things that you look at in a baby that's a little early. I had a smooth pregnancy. The only problem with my delivery was the care of the hospital itself. And I do notice that she's just, and I hear other carnivore parents say this, like Kelly Hogan. I do notice that she's generally calmer, more well-behaved. And the biggest thing I noticed, because I went forward and had another child. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. And I have never had a problem with my children sleeping, ever. And of course, there's so many variables and every kid's different. I can't pinpoint and say that it's been our nutrition, but I can say that it's helped. It surely hasn't hurt. And that I do in my heart believe that there's a reason that my children are such good sleepers, such good eaters, just so well functioning.
During your pregnancy, was your obstetrician aware of the fact that you were on a carnivore diet? And if so, prenatal vitamins, folate, any concerns that were brought up by your provider?
Yeah, no, I didn't tell him. I didn't want to deal with it. My second pregnancy, I did tell my doctor because I had the most amazing doctor. But my first pregnancy just wasn't adequate care. And I felt better in my own hands. And I was, what's the point? So they were unaware, but I did have, all my blood work and all my regular pregnancy labs and tests done. And there was no, not a single lack of anything.
Did you, a lot of times with pregnancy, they'll do a oral glucose tolerance test, modified test. Were you having to do that as well?
Yeah. And I see some people it's so polarized. Some people are so vehemently against it and refuse to do it. And that's fine. It's not fun, but I was it's not going to kill me. I didn't have a reaction. I just went ahead and did it. My sugars were great, like they always were. And so it was just my personal decision. But I didn't react.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to Carnivore.diet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success. Yeah, some people on just low carb diets in general will tend to fail an oral glucose tolerance test for a number of reasons, and a lot of people recommend reintroducing carbohydrates for a couple days to a week before doing that to reacclimate your body to it. But so, you got the two kiddos, obviously they're still very young as we can hear. How is their diet? I mean, are they full carnivore? They eat a lot of meat and stuff, or how do you feed the kids? Because you say they're sleeping well, they're doing great, they're well behaved, they're kind of muscular little kids. What are you doing with those guys?
Yeah. So they're not full carnivore. I just don't see, they don't have a specific medical need like I did for it. Mm-hmm. They are, however, totally whole foods and fairly low oxalate because my husband's a carrier for alpha-1, which is an antitrypsin deficiency, an autoimmune condition. I then have had the connective tissue problems and autoimmune problems. And so I'm quite careful. I think I don't want to trigger an onset of these things in my children because I know they could be quite prone. So they're not full carnivore until or unless they choose to be, or they would have a medical need. But we eat totally whole foods, pretty low oxalate. They eat a lot of meat, and we always feed meat first. And it's funny, I say, eat your meat, and then you can have your mushrooms or your, berries, whatever. And it's funny because most people, the doctor tells you have to start with rice cereal. You have to start with oat cereal, rice cereal. The first thing I ever fed my 2-year-old daughter was meat pate. She's fine. That was the first thing she ever ate. And for a while, you start with teaspoons and then they work up. So she'd have milk and then, 2-3 jars of meat a day. Never had a reaction, never had an aversion, never had any kind of digestive problems. So it's worked really well for us. But yeah, our biggest rule is always feed meat first, and it has to be a whole food.
And a lot of babies, they're real rashy. They have eczema. Any issues with that type of stuff, or gassy or cranky, or those kids doing pretty good without that stuff?
Yeah, no, they're great. Matter of fact, neither the youngest one hasn't. The oldest one never had a diaper rash or anything until things other than meat were introduced. And so I had to watch for how she was going to react to different plants instead of meat. So she never had so much as, a red bump on her butt until plant foods were introduced.
It's interesting to see that, maybe because kids' skin can be very, very sensitive. And even after it's been, as we know, we don't fully break down a lot of the plant products. They kind of are excreted like they are, and some of that may be irritating. Like I know if you roll around in the grass, sometimes you come up with a pretty nice rash. And so it's kind of like, are these, plant irritants sensitive to the skin? And it's interesting about the baby rash. So you kind of save money on diaper rash cream and that type of stuff. I can remember, I've had 4 kids and, changed a lot of diapers over the year. And I can remember putting the butt cream on there and, just doing all that stuff. And, it's good. It's nice that they avoid it because they're not happy when they got a diaper rash. It's not fun for those kids. And then when the kids aren't happy, no one's happy because they're screaming their heads off. So good.
And it breaks your heart when there's like an open wound on your kid's little butt, it's hard for everybody.
Exactly. And it just seems like, why would that be normal? Why would that be? I guess wearing diapers maybe not normal for, for humans that are running around pooping all over the place when you're little kids way back then. But, you said you just, for your own personal diet, it was, just whatever meat you'd like. Or were you going out of your way to eat grass-finished meat or adding, liver and kidneys and things like that in there? Or what did you do with that stuff?
No, I absolutely wasn't. running out of my way to eat organs or things like that. We were newlyweds. We hadn't bought our house yet. We were newlyweds, renting, pregnant. And my salon shut down during COVID. And so we were then a one-income household. My husband works for the prisons here. So he was the only one working. I ate the hell out of grocery store, regular, grain-fed meat. And I was, and still am, perfectly fine. Common sense says any meat is better than no meat and a low quality of life. So I did great on grocery store meat personally.
Yeah, as do many people. And like I said, when somebody asked me, I said, overall, it doesn't seem to make that big of a difference. There are people that will say that they feel better this or that way, but in general, I think I'm pretty comfortable in just recommending just whatever you like, whatever you can afford tends to work really well, which is what people have been saying about this diet for years before I ever got into this stuff. And so I think, there's people that have tried and tested this out for more than several decades now. And, it's one of those things that's tried and true. Do you, as far as, does anyone give you any hard time at all? Is there anybody, like, I don't know if you're online or anybody out there saying, hey, you're killing your kids by feeding them meat, or you're hurting the planet, or you're evil, or do you get any of that stuff? Is anybody giving that to you?
Yeah, there's always the rogue Instagram vegan. But I typically just delete it and move on. I don't face a lot of blowback except the keyboard warriors. My brother is actually vegan. My dad, husband, and I are carnivore. My grandma does Weight Watchers and he is vegan. So Friday night dinners are interesting, to say the least. Even he supports me. He could care less. As long as I feel good, he's happy. And as long as he feels good, I'm happy. So I'm just lucky that I haven't faced a lot of blowback. I have one particular relative that's like, okay, yeah, you're crazy, you're going to die, but do you?
Well, and that would be nice if society in general is that way. Just you do whatever you want, but we unfortunately have people that are aggressively trying to limit, particularly how we eat. People that eat meat. There are people out there that want to make that either illegal or extremely difficult to do, and that's why we have to continue to push back against that stuff. Not that I have any animosity to anybody else. I think you should be allowed to eat. Whatever you want to eat, that's up to you, as long as it's available, and makes sense. And clearly we've been eating meat as a human species since we've been a human species. I mean, that's pretty, I don't think anybody would dispute that. Do you, so you said you were able to reintroduce some foods over the last, whatever period of time. What have you been able to reintroduce, and any issues with that?
I haven't really had any issues. Anything low oxalate is game, typically is pretty good. I stay away from cruciferous things, from dark leafy greens, and who needs lettuce anyway? But I stay away from these things. So I've introduced, and some people have like big nightshade problems, but I can eat a tomato now and be fine, some mushrooms, a grilled onion here and there. The funny thing is, though, back, because I've been doing this keto thing for 3.5 years. I've been with Revero for 2 years. And so like 2 years ago, if I were to eat a tomato, an onion, anything that wasn't meat, I would have had a reaction. So 2 or 3 years later, if I go off the rails, so to speak, for a meal and have some kind of sugar-free tomato sauce on my meat, I don't have a reaction. So that's very interesting to me. And I don't know if it speaks to a healed gut or if it speaks to, my body can process a small amount of these things now that I don't have a buildup of these toxins and substances in my body. But it's interesting now that I'm able to eat these things sparingly. And before I wasn't. Fruit doesn't seem to bother me. I would lose the rest of this baby weight if I cut it out. but fruit doesn't seem to bother me. And it's funny, it doesn't seem to bother my blood sugar either. Of course, I'm not just eating like a whole mango and not having protein or fat with it. But I eat small amounts of fruit and small amounts of like tomatoes, mushrooms, occasionally an onion. And I haven't had problem, but I just take care that it's not a large part of my diet, that it's a garnish, so to speak, and I'm good.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've seen that, and it seems like you see a period of time where our guts get damaged from probably the standard American diet and all the many, many problems with that diet. And over time you heal it, and then you're able to sort of tolerate these sort of quote unquote natural whole foods again, or at least to a degree, like you do in a small part, whereas to me, it's like, making sure meat or animal products are the foundation of your diet. That's where most of your nutrition comes from. And these things become lifestyle flavor enhancement things. If not taken to an extreme, many people do well with them. Some still don't. Some still have problems with that if they have ongoing issues, and depending on how severe they were, they may have a long period of time before they're able to do that, if ever. And so that's good to hear. So you've, like I said, you're one of our coaches. Do you find that you're able to? Do you get much feedback from doing that? Is that enjoyable for you to do?
It's so enjoyable because I like to see people have the same thing that happened to me. You wake up, you have a good day, you think it's an anomaly, you think it's a standalone experience, and you keep waking up. I want to see people keep waking up to a good day. I remember when, like, being able to get on my knees at the bathtub and bathe my daughter. I was like, you've got to be kidding me that I can do this. And I want to see people do that. I host the addiction recovery meeting on Mondays here for Revero, and it's the most enjoyable time of my week. I have also, overcome addiction. And so to be able to talk with other people that are struggling, overcoming, or have overcome that, it's so rewarding. And a lot of the coaching I do is with new mothers, expectant mothers, those trying to become mothers. And so there's nothing better to me. I mean, family is the base and the heart of our society. So helping moms, helping dads, and helping addicts or recovered addicts, I just can't think of anything more purposeful.
Yeah, that's true. And what you say about family being so incredibly important, and certainly it is. And I think we are, unfortunately, losing a lot of that in modern society in general, which is a shame to see. When it comes to, so you mentioned addiction, was your addiction this kind of processed food, sugar addiction, or what were you dealing with?
Opioids.
Oh, opioids. Okay. Did you find the diet had helped you with coming off opioids?
I was already long past it, so it didn't really have much to do with it. Yeah. So I was already in, the last chapter. So I actually don't have experience so much with the diet helping, but I do have the experience when it comes to support and going through it and coping.
Yeah. And was that related to the medical condition you'd had? I mean, was that something because you were having pain associated with the connective tissue issue, the lupus stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at that crucial age of 14, 15, and I had this pain, the doctors, and you're, an orthopedic surgeon, you're familiar with all these medications and typical, starting doses. Mm-hmm. They put me on 10 milligrams of hydrocodone, like a Vicodin, like 3 times a day, which is freaking wild, right? Not like 5 as needed, not 7.5 as needed, 10 3 times a day, not PRN. So nothing ever takes out the factor of my choices, right? So I don't want to divert responsibility, but it helped create the perfect storm no doctor had a conversation with my grandparents or my dad about like what this medication really is, what's going to happen if you quit taking it, you're going to be sick. You need to. So there was just never any of this had. I was underage and I had a lot of strife in my home life with my mother. And I still remember the first time we had been fighting. If I had a bad headache, I would take 4 ibuprofen instead of 2, or, 2 Tylenol instead of 1. And so I was hurting real bad. I think I was in a flare up and I was fighting with my mom. And so I just took 2 of my pain pills and was like, I'm going to bed. I'm going, to my room. Well, when I took 2 of those in a young body, in a small body, that was the first time I ever remember that light bulb of being like, oh, wow, all of a sudden I feel better. I'm not bothered by the fight or the things that were said. I'm not anxious. I'm not angry. I was mellowed me out, felt good. So yeah, troubled home life, a lot of meds, a lot of pain, access to opioids. It was ultimately my choice, but it was a perfect storm.
Yeah, it's you have this kind of coping mechanism that sort of solves the problem temporarily, but ultimately ends up, becoming very destructive, as we see. And I've seen a lot of people with issues around opioid addiction. It was very common, and still, even today, still is. And a lot of people have ultimately succumbed to that, unfortunately. As far as, you'd mentioned back in the day, 4 or 5 pounds of food a day, which even I can sometimes do that, but I don't even eat. If I eat more than 4 pounds is plenty for me, and I'm a much bigger person than most people. What does today look like for you? Is it? What would a typical day where the food look like for you now?
2 pounds, 1 to 2 pounds. It just depends. I eat usually a meal around lunchtime, which is probably, I'm not hungry usually when I get up. I eat a meal around lunchtime, which is my lighter meal, maybe some eggs and sausage or whatever. And then at dinner, that's when I tend to have, maybe I ate a half pound the first meal, and at dinner, then I eat like a pound and a half, and then I'm done.
As far as, because a lot of people say this is a cost prohibitive diet, and you're eating it, your husband's eating it more or less, I guess. Your kids are eating a lot of meat. Is it cost prohibitive? Is it something, or are you able to make that work?
Yeah, well, and beef has skyrocketed so much, and we eat primarily beef. But even if a pound of ground beef is $6, that's a $6 meal. So if you're going and getting a Stouffer's lasagna out of the freezer for, I don't know, $15, whatever, I have no idea what it is, you're paying more. You're paying the same, or you're paying more to buy 20 ingredients that are going to go bad, and the vegetables are going to rot in the fridge. Even if meat is $5 to $10 a pound, if you're eating a pound, it's really not cost prohibitive at all.
Yeah, not to mention savings on things like antacids and reflux meds and all the other things that people often end up doing. It's kind of funny when you go to the store and you see just how enormous the supplement and the health food. I don't call it health food, but the supplement and deal with disease aisle is. It's all these vitamins and antacids and on and on and on that are there from all the garbage people are eating. It's quite amazing to see that, and so many people just routinely, it's like, oh, here's my junk food, here's my medication or supplement to counter the junk food. Indiana's kind of a rural state, sort of. It's I guess I'd say it's a pretty rural state. Are you finding the attitude in Indiana is everybody needs to go vegan, plant-based? Are you running into much of that, or what's life like in Indiana?
No, we still have a lot of farmers. We still have a lot of livestock, nothing like we used to, but that's the same everywhere as things move. It's kind of an industrialized scale of production, but we're still kind of a down-home state. You find it when you go to the city. You find it because you go to Burger King to get, meat patties, and they've got, Impossible burgers on the menu, because I think that's a huge franchise that's being influenced by these other larger cities around the world. But you don't see it in regular towns here.
Yeah, and in Indiana, outside of Indianapolis, there aren't any really major metropolitan centers. Maybe that region up near Chicago in that northwest corner where you have Gary and stuff. It's pretty dense, but most of like I said, Indiana is a relatively rural city, rural state. Well, I'll tell you what, Emily, if somebody wants to, social media, can share your social media, and if somebody wants to contact you for maybe some coaching support, how do they do it? I mean, I know you say you end up seeing a lot of new moms, pregnant moms, things like that. How do people find you?
The best place to find me is Revero. Search me up. Coaching link. I am on Instagram as Coach Emily Ruiz. I'm so busy. I haven't posted anymore. I'm on it. I will see what you post. I will respond if you message me, and you can look at, some of my past posts, and some of my life and stuff is on there. And I think that's Coach Emily Ruiz. Okay. But the best place to find me is at the Monday Addiction Recovery meeting, or if you're wanting coaching services, the only place I'm doing that is here on Revero.
Okay. And the Monday Addiction meeting, remind me again the time that it takes place and the time zone.
So it's 2:30 for me, which makes it 11:30 PST, I think.
Are you in Eastern time?
Right.
Yeah, that's 3 hours.
Yeah. So it is. It's 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific.
Yeah, Indiana is one of those weird states where the time zone there's a little bit of central time, and there's a little cut. I remember that when I was a kid, you could literally drive from one town to the other and be an hour different. So it was kind of interesting. I lived up there in a little old town called Dyer, Indiana, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but not far from Muncie. It's about 50 miles away, I think. So
yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Emily, for doing this. Keep up the good work. Congratulations on solving some of those issues, and congratulations on the 2 little babies. And sounds like they're off to a great start. And thanks. The rest of you guys will be back again tomorrow. You guys have a great day. I got a couple New York strips I'm going to go put down. So we'll talk to everybody later. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now. Thanks, Emily.
Bye, guys.